Good morning, everybody. As I said, I did not have this on my 2026 legislative session bingo card where the Iowa House Republicans are raising taxes. Today we're talking about a tax that will hit Iowans directly in their wallets, higher healthcare tax costs. And Iowa House Republicans are pushing a bill out of the House that would create this brand new healthcare tax. That will happen this afternoon. I presume they have the votes. I know there will be some Republican opposition, obviously, because they are very, very, very grumpy about this. This will skyrocket healthcare costs for thousands of Iowans and small business owners. We're already hearing that they also have a plan. We're hearing that this plan will also raise healthcare premiums for those that are affected by about $500 a month for a family of four. $500 a year for a family of four at a time when families are already stretched thin. And what I can tell you is that we stand firmly against this as a caucus because it does raise costs for individuals and for small businesses. And our point person on that today is Srinivas. Dr. Srinivas is here as ranking member of Appropriations, and she will answer any specific questions. I think she has an opening as well.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. This is a new healthcare tax that is going to hit Iowans when they can least afford it. We've seen rising costs in everything from medications to food to childcare, and people are struggling. They're living paycheck to paycheck. I can tell you that just looking at my own patients, I have conversations with them all the time about what medications they're gonna afford this month, about how they can ration things, about whether they choose to buy their insulin or feed their family. These are not decisions that Iowans should be making, period. And this new healthcare tax is only going to make that worse. When people are talking about the cost of eggs being too expensive for them to be able to buy their blood pressure medication at the same time, we're seeing $500 is gonna raise that burden even more. $500 a year. And what this means too is it's not gonna hit the people who are the wealthiest. It's not gonna hit the people on the big employer plans. It's the small businesses, the people who are also getting their insurance through the healthcare exchange. Those are the families that it's going to hit. The ones who have the most bare minimum budget to live upon. This is not the time that we should be making life more unaffordable for Iowans, and that's exactly what this bill does. And it was rushed through in such a fashion that it went from being introduced into the Ways and Means Committee last week to going all the way through appropriations and the floor by the end of this week. Nothing can be thoroughly thought out that hits the bottom line in the pocketbooks of Iowans with a new tax that gets rushed through that quickly and that quietly. We need to do what's right for Iowans. We need to vote this down and make sure that Iowans can continue to afford their health care. And with that, I would love to turn it over to Senator Weiner.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming here. You heard what Leader Meyer and Representative Srinivas said. Iowans have told us time and again that they want us to lower costs. They want us to lower housing costs. Instead, they've seen home insurance rates spike and property taxes go up. Iowans have asked for health care they can afford. Instead, they got hikes from the federal level, and the majority party proposal running today in the House, it's gone through committee in the Senate, will jack up their health insurance and premium costs. The majority party that dragged us into this mess over the past decade now wants, as well, to hamstring the next governor by saying, you know what? We don't need, as legislators, to do our actual job and pass a budget. We'll just pass the buck, ignore the voters, and not bother to work across the aisle. We'll just leave it to unelected bureaucrats to deal with the budget. Also, they can avoid having to work with a governor they potentially don't like. That is not the Iowa way. It's not what Iowans want. The majority party's priorities aren't solving the problems that Iowans face every day. It's time to start flexing our work together muscle memory and addressing the issues that Iowans actually care about. And with that, I will turn it over to Senator Cindy Winckler, who is our ranking member on State Government Committee.
Thank you. And last night we had an interesting evening in the State Government Committee. There was a late amendment to a bill last night, and it was the continuing appropriation amendment. Iowans expect us to work together in the House and the Senate to pass a budget. That's one of our #1 priorities and responsibilities. If this particular legislation is enacted, the Senate could adjourn and walk away from passing a budget, and also walk away from working on eminent domain or the property taxes or any of the other issues that Iowans care about and want us to take care of. We're hearing about the healthcare piece. You know, that could be, it could just be on the table and unresolved as far as the Iowans' pocketbook. This is a power grab. It is a way in which they identify that they cannot in any way work together and cooperate with others who might not agree with them. That is not what we expect. This is DC politics at best, and Iowans are tired of DC politics.
So, and with that, we'll be happy to take your questions.
On the HMO tax, I'm curious because the state does have a Medicaid deficit. What solutions do Democrats have for filling that deficit?
So there are large portions of the Medicaid deficit that can be traced directly back to poor decision-making that's been done that we need to reverse. One of the biggest issues around Medicaid was a privatization that happened in 2017. We saw that it has reduced significantly access to care, increased denials for basic elements of care that patients need, while also costing our state more money. That alone was one of the most disastrous things we did for Medicaid, and on top of that, within the few years following the privatization, because of the poor reimbursements that were happening, we saw 25% of rural clinics ended up closing because they couldn't afford that poor margin. We really need to take steps to reversing this Medicaid mess, getting Iowans back to the care that they should deserve and that they need, without having to go through so many middlemen that are trying to take advantage of the system. If we even start to do that, we can start to see the trend of our Medicaid deficit reversing. On top of that, there are other areas in which we have really had poor budgeting that we've seen from the majority party, including the fact that we've been giving corporate tax cuts to the wealthiest that haven't been having an impact on people's pocketbooks, everyday Iowans' pocketbooks. We've also seen when they removed the income restriction on vouchers, that has increased the cost for vouchers up to almost $400 million per year. There's no reason somebody who is a billionaire or a multi-millionaire in the state of Iowa should be getting money for sending their kids to the same exact schools that they were already doing. That money should be going to the Iowans who can barely afford to live day to day.
Let me just mention too that this is a mess of their own making. If you recall from the actual committee that we had earlier this week, Representative Zadner did point out, he asked these questions last year. Is this enough to cover your Medicaid? And every year it seems like we come back with these supplemental requests. At some point, they have to take responsibility for the mess that they created a couple years ago with these tax cuts. And now they're raiding the taxpayer trust fund to pay for their mistakes.
At Wednesday morning's public hearing, the Insurance Commissioner Doug Ommen, he disputed that this bill would significantly increase people's health insurance expenses. Can one of you respond to his remarks?
Well, let me just say this, that as Iowa House Democrats will have an amendment to make sure that we do not pass the increase along to consumers. So we will have an amendment that says you cannot pass this increase along to consumers. And I know Megan's working on a couple other amendments, but that is our concern. We kind of view it as two different bills, really, or two different parts of the same bill, which is the rating of the taxpayer trust fund, but also the increased tax. And so we want to make sure that we fully fund Medicaid, but we should have done that last year. And so this is just their budget, part of their budgeting gimmicks that they have, that they let this go until they have to do a supplemental the next year. So.
And following up on that, this morning in the HHS committee, Representative Harris said House Republicans have no interest in codifying the privatization of Medicaid. Were you surprised by that? Do you have any insight on why House Republicans are taking that position that was in the Senate bill that they sent down?
I I wasn't aware of that comment, but,
Okay.
you know, I think that's a significant, that's a significant point that you're making there. And, you know, obviously we are with them on that, so.
I'm very happy to see that they said that they don't have any appetite for that, because there was, in our view, as Senate Democrats, no need to codify something that's been working apparently okay by executive order for a decade now. The other thing that's happened with Medicaid is that we are out of COVID funds. And one of the reasons we haven't really seen the need to backfill Medicaid deficits is because there was extra money from the COVID funds to do it in the past, and that no longer exists. So we need to get back to a system that worked prior to this. I think we've already seen Rob Sand say that he would go back to the prior system, and then we can see how much money we can save by doing that.
Moving forward, what's your sense of it? I know this is largely in the hands of the majority party, but what's your sense of the main issues still unresolved in property taxes and eminent domain, and how that will loom over the coming weeks?
Well, we only have a few weeks left. I said this to my caucus yesterday. A few weeks that we're supposed to have left, Senator Weiner. So the only thing I would say to that is that there seems to be a lot of work to be done that, and you know, in the next few weeks with the big three that you mentioned there. So you've got property taxes, which I don't think they're close on. You get an eminent domain, I know they're not close on. And then you have a budget. We don't even have targets down for the budgets yet. So I think at some point, something has to give, and they have to start working together to get this done. And obviously, I can only speak for the Iowa House Democrats. We'll have our own priorities, and we'll make sure that we present those as well.
It appears as if the property tax bills have sort of shifted into two bills. One that I understand is an amalgam now in the House, and the Senate bill, Senator Dawson's bill. I honestly would have expected that our colleagues in the majority party would have sat down last summer and come to some sort of agreement on what they wanted to see, so they could push it through if it's because there are Iowans who truly need relief from property taxes. So and as Leader Meyer said, I don't see any movement at this point on eminent domain. We used to have, before my time here, we used to have joint budget targets. It's not even clear to me that there are budget targets that are joint among our majority party colleagues at this point. And we are, now that we're passing the second funnel, we are into that period of the session where we really need to focus on the budget.
You mentioned about the continuing budget resolution, the sort of impact on, just that, you know, that's part of the legislature's job to pass the budget, but, you know, there's also the context that last year there was a holdup in the budget process because of eminent domain. I mean, is that playing into discussions among you and your colleagues or among Republicans?
I couldn't tell you what the Republicans are talking about at this point. Our focus is on our job to actually pass a budget. It's true that last year the budget was held up so that there could be a vote on the eminent domain bill that the governor ultimately vetoed. I don't know what it looks like this year, but when some of our colleagues play games like this, it not only potentially impacts us as legislators and our ability to do our job, it impacts whoever the next governor is going to be.
About the political implications of a tax increase. Who among you was here when the minivan tax was raised? And what was the impact of that in terms of the Democratic majority?
I think I was on staff, but I don't. What year was that?
It was a while ago.
I think I was 12 years old. I think
Brad and I wasn't even born yet.
between Cindy and I, we've been here the longest, so. Do you remember that, Cindy?
conversation, I don't.
I'm taking no credit for that.
Are there any bills, you know, we're getting to another final deadline, there are some things that are not gonna make it, are there any that you wanna point to, either that did, get through the deadline or that didn't, that, you wanna highlight for IOs?
I would just like to point out that I'm really happy to see that Representative Ehlert's early childhood play bill got through the Education Committee in the Senate yesterday, which means it remains alive. I think that's a real positive.
Next week, we will start as the minority party to start proposing motions on the floor to bring forth bills that have stalled. It's called a Rule 60 motion. It's a procedural motion within the House rules that allows a bill to be pulled out and put on the calendar for debate. And a few of those will be paid family leave. You'll see the minimum wage, worker misclassification, wage theft, things like that were all part of our agenda at the very beginning of the year, which they have not passed. We will bring those forth and enforce votes on those.
The House never did vote on the abortion medication bill, and the Senate, it didn't get out of committee, but we saw in 2018, there was that late effort, also in 2020, late effort to amend a live wire bill to have an abortion restriction. Do you think we're done this year talking about new abortion restrictions, or do you think they're gonna try to pull some last minute amendment thing?
I personally have no idea, but I think what we saw yesterday in State Government Committee is proof that bills are never dead until we sine die at the end of session, because that they amended a bill with a bill that's arguably not germane to it in order to push a measure that never otherwise would have moved forward.
Well, as you all know, nothing's ever really dead until signing die. So I expect that there'll be a run at some of these things within their own. I think they have people within their own caucus that still want to do these things, and I think we'll see a run at some of these more egregious bills out there regarding abortion by the end of the year by maybe some rogue members of their caucus.
Is there any surprise of the bill that would allow community colleges to offer the four-year degree programs, that that's stalling? Was there any surprise there with that?
That's on your guys' side.
You know, it's one of those things that is difficult when public entities might be competing with other public entities. We have our community colleges that we support completely, as well as our regents and private nonprofit institutions. And the competition is pretty difficult at this time. We know that the population of high school graduates is declining, and so there is that hope that everyone can continue to provide education that is affordable. And we had that conversation in our caucus as we were talking about the bill. I can't speak for anyone else. I just didn't think that this was a time to pass something that would start a brand new program and require more funding. So it's something that we can continue to talk about, and I'm sure we will.
That bill didn't pass the House with majority Republicans. It only passed because Democrats supported it. Why did Democrats support it? It had 48 yes votes from Republicans.
Well, but I think you had some people that believe strongly in it and other people that opposed to it, and we don't twist arms in the caucus, so on something like that especially.
Is the Senate where House Higher Education Committee bills go to die? I mean, there's several of them that have come over here that just have.
We saw that last year. I couldn't tell you how many of them are going to end up seeing the light of day this year. I would just really point to us. There was an op-ed that ran in the Gazette. There have been a number of stories out about the enormous economic impact on this state of the Regents universities, and they're doing just fine. And my caucus believes that we should just let them continue to do just fine the way they are.
The bill that relates to the House Republicans' three strikes bill is potentially coming through the Senate committee today with, we've heard an amendment, but I don't know what that will look like. Have you had a chance to consider that bill? There was some Democratic support for it in the House. It sounds like there might be some changes coming, but, do either one of you wanna share anything about where that is at? What are your thoughts?
I honestly have not yet had a chance to go through the Judiciary Committee agenda for this afternoon. I'm on Judiciary. I have heard a lot from a variety of people in the legal profession, including county attorneys and others, about their concerns about what this would mean for the workload, what it would mean for the budget. And that I also ended up talking to someone who literally would not have been talking to me if they had been subject to this 3 strikes, yet now they had been out earning money, contributing via taxes to their community for a number of years. So we'll see what happens this afternoon, but there are both very real budget concerns about it and very real concerns about what it would mean for human beings.
We have time for maybe 1 or 2 more.
Senator Weiner, the bill to restrict H-1B visas at the Regents universities is up for debate at the Senate, or is eligible for debate. There's been some pushback from faculty at the Regents universities. Could you just comment on where your caucus stands on that?
The bill to, I didn't hear the first.
Restricted H-1B visas at the Regents universities.
That is not a topic that we've discussed in our caucus. I know that, that those who come on H-1B visas do valuable work and provide valuable services, but it's not a topic we've had a chance to discuss.
Okay, we'll wrap it there. Thanks, everyone.